Says we're live.
Yay! All right. Well, good evening, everybody. It's totally dark here, and I don't think you guys can see me, but this is Sister Danger, and I'm here with Prince of Queens. I'm broadcasting to you live from the middle of the woods, which is why it's totally dark, except for that fire that you might be able to partially see going in the background. But I don't know if you can or not.
Now
So,
we can see you all of a sudden for some reason.
I just tried to tilt the screen down a little bit. Oh, there. So that maybe it would pick up a little bit of the firelight. So I guess that maybe worked. So, well, because up above me, it's just kind of dark clouds now. So I don't know. It's so hot out here right now, though, but I figured that the only way that that anybody might be able to even remotely see me a little bit would be if I put a fire. So, and besides, I have to get rid of the wood by next weekend anyway. This whole week was super hot. Okay, here's my lantern. Can you see my lantern? Can you see my lantern?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Okay. I don't know how quickly this stream will go or for how long it will last because it's going through my portable interwebs that I have, and I'm not sure what that capacity is, but yes, this is the adventure that I was talking about. Hey, Newt, and hey, Tea Maker. I'm off here in the middle of the woods. This is the week in between the 2 weekends of the Canterbury Renaissance Fair. So now that it's dark, there's really nothing for me to do out here. So, and Prince wanted to live stream, so here we are. But since it was you, Prince, that wanted to live stream, what's going on? Tell me the news.
Well, okay. So, yeah, I wanted to talk about I have some issues going on in my personal life, which I don't want to talk about on my channel at the moment because of the fact that the person who is quite literally out to get me actually knows of my channel, and I'm not sure if she like monitors it, but she very likely might because she's crazy. So long story short, well, I'll give the long story, but the important thing to keep in mind at this very moment is that my sister has launched an active smear campaign against me. And it has been going on for about a year, but it has progressed and gotten worse. And the most recent development happened publicly, and a friend of mine was able to, she was talking about me on somebody else's Facebook timeline, somebody who had blocked me. I'll explain how this all works. But a friend of mine saw it and told me about it, and I asked her to get screenshots because it's at this point, I definitely actually have grounds for a defamation lawsuit. She's telling people that I'm mentally unwell, while she also tells them that she's only saying so because she's supposedly concerned about me, except for she's also telling them to block me. So, and she's trying to discredit me as a speaker, as a you know, whatever, like a socio-political commentator who criticizes feminism and who advocates for the gender-specific issues of men and boys. She's trying to discredit me by she's simultaneously saying, "Oh, he's just crazy. Don't listen to him." But she's also said in the same thread, she was saying that having a mental illness doesn't make somebody make hate videos. So she was also sort of admitting that she doesn't necessarily think that I'm crazy. She's just sort of saying that, you know. I haven't actually looked at the screenshots of her comments yet, just because I don't feel like subjecting myself to that anger at the moment. My friend basically
Right.
told me what they are. And it's not surprising to me because she's been saying this for about a year now. So I'll tell the full version of the story. Is that cool? Like
Yeah.
how it got to this point?
Yeah, it totally is.
Okay.
I mean, go ahead.
So this is what happened. When I was 5 years old and she was 14, 15, maybe I was 6, my parents split up for the second time. My sister is 9 years older than I, so she was like 14, 15. And she's very smart. She's fucking crazy. I think that she might have some sort of pathological narcissism going on, some sort of something like that. But I don't want to blame her behavior on any sort of, mental disorder. Ultimately, what she definitely is a very calculated liar. She lies a lot. She's had a problem with this. But she does. I don't think she's a pathological liar. Like, it's not like she lies constantly to the point where it's like she doesn't realize she's lying because she has such a problem. You know what I mean? It's like,
strategic.
What?
It's strategic.
Yeah, it's very strategic. She knows exactly what she's doing, and she knows how to get away with it. So when she was about 14, 15, she had moved out of the house because, my parents were fighting a lot. They had divorced once, then gotten back together for a year, and then were fighting a whole bunch again, and then my mom divorced my dad again at that point. And so obviously home life wasn't particularly good. And my sister had decided to move out of the house. And she was very smart. She had gone to the early entrance program at the University of Washington. So she had a lot of older friends. And she moved out of the house, and she was able to move out of the house. And I think my mother was giving her child support money. My mom was semi-okay with her living outside of the house. And I think that she had a job. And what happened was my sister knew people who were feminists. This was in the late 80s, right? And it was in Seattle. So this was in the peak of third wave feminism.
How exciting.
What?
How exciting, she said sarcastically.
Yeah. So this was the peak of third wave feminism, and she knew a lot of friends from university and stuff, and they were all feminists. And when my mother divorced my father for the second time, my sister was told by her feminist friends that she could become an emancipated minor, and she could tell the court that my father had abused her. And if she did that, she could become an emancipated minor, and then he would have to pay child support money directly to her. And so she had a very tangible reason to level a false accusation against him. And not only did she decide to do that, but she said that she had a recovered memory from when she was like 5.
Where was your mother in all this? Did she just support that, or?
Yeah, because my mom's kind of a cunt sometimes.
Got it.
Ultimately, okay, this was at the peak of the recovered memory movement, which was a cult of itself that was strongly linked to feminists because it was all about, abusive memories being recovered from childhood, blah, blah, blah. So obviously there was a lot of feminist overlap. Probably most people in the movement were feminists. But it was something that sprouted up in the mid to late 80s and then kind of went away as it got debunked.
Right.
So at the time, and my mom was very into therapy and stuff. So I think that my mom I think that she if it were to happen now, my mom would probably be more skeptical, but at the time, also just my mom What?
At the time, it was all the rage.
Yeah.
But
And
I mean,
also my mom just really hated my dad a lot.
so basically, it was just kind of like a vendetta a little bit for your mom because
Yeah.
why else would you just go along with your kid saying something like that unless you just want to stick it to somebody?
Yeah, and I think that that's exactly what she did. Also, I think that my I would say that my parents were in a co-abusive relationship with each other. My mom is relentlessly naggy and relentlessly badgering and tries to make you feel like crap about yourself and make you feel like you're, you know, not a
Hmm.
good person. She has a, you know, tendency to do such things. And she did that with my dad, and my dad drank a lot as his retreat. But he didn't beat her or anything. She's never once accused him of hitting her. Um,
I'm, I'm just, I don't know if you guys can even see me or not. I'm just gonna like step away and grab snacky things to munch on while I'm sitting out here in the outdoors, but I can hear you just fine.
okay. Um, so yeah, what my mother decided to side with my sister, which is, you know, pretty fucked up because like to side with somebody based on a accusation of something that supposedly happened 10 years prior that you didn't remember up until now, and she happened to come forward with within the same week that my mom, you know, divorced my sister or my father. Like my mom divorces my father, and then within the same week his daughter recovers a memory from 10 years ago. It's, you know, that would be like the biggest insult to injury for my father.
Right.
Like it couldn't get much
Oh,
worse.
shit balls. Go ahead.
It couldn't get much worse than that. So what happened as a result was that my father ended up fighting for custody over my sister. My I have a sister who's only 2 years older.
Hmm.
um, he fought he fought for custody over us two. And the custody battle went on for about 2 years, and it was grueling and awful. And eventually, my mother resigned and just let my father take custody of us. Ultimately, I didn't want to move over to his house. He tricked me into saying that I wanted to into saying that I wanted to because he said that it was just going to be a trial run, but that was actually a lie. It was a trick. He tricked me. I was like 5 or 6, and he just tricked me. Um, and because he wasn't a good parent, like he was negligent. Um, but at the same time, I understand now his motive for doing that, which was
Right.
that, you know, my mom, he felt like my mom and my sister were crazy, and he didn't want me around that environment. Like he didn't want me around a crazy person who was willing to just lie about him because she was vindictive, you know? He was like, I don't want my son and my other daughter around these crazy feminist bitches, basically. And I mean, I'm sure there was a little bit of like competitiveness, like once he got into the lawsuit, like he's like, no, I have to win. But like
Right.
ultimately, I understand his motive. So, but at the same time, I always resented my father a whole lot because of that, because he basically stole me from my mother, because I wanted to stay with my mother. Um, so yeah, that's just a shitty version of my childhood. So, and then, you know, my father was very, very, very adamant always that he was not guilty of the crime. And my sister ended up dropping the charges after a while. She decided that it wasn't worth it to her. I think she realized that she was going to lose ultimately, and that my dad was not going to go out without a fight. Obviously, because you can't. I mean, technically, if it were somehow true, that you know he could have gone to prison,
Right.
potentially.
That's a
Uh,
pretty big claim.
yeah, yeah, and so he was very adamant that he didn't do it. My sister was. And she was always very, very adamant that he did do it. And some weird things happened. Like I guess he tried to sort of intimidate her when, you know, like telling her that she needed to drop the charges. Like he let himself into our old house where he wasn't supposed to be, supposedly at some point.
Mhm.
Which, you know, like I don't condone that. You know, like I'm not saying I side with my dad. I mean, okay, I side with him in the way that like he was falsely accused. I don't know if
Mhm.
handled it as gracefully as possible. But like, hey, what are you gonna do? Like, how, he was the one that was technically being wronged. Like, there was enough grounds for her to maybe say that, like, she should be an emancipated minor for some other reason. Like, she could say that he was an alcoholic and that my mom was bad, or, you know, I don't fucking know. She didn't have to just make something up. You know?
There are different grounds that you can become an emancipated minor under.
And
so
but you know, feminists will train you. The quickest way to get what you want is to level an abuse accusation. That's the quickest way. And they will train you. They will tell you, like, there's feminists in the system that know that, and they tell women that. So ultimately I resented my dad, and I liked my sister more than him because she at least wasn't like a drunk asshole. So I always kind of sided with her overall. But at the same time, I never fully, like, 100% in my mind believed that he did it. Like, I kind of did, but I kind of thought that he did something or other, but it always seemed to me like he legitimately thought that he didn't do it. And I remember thinking to myself, like, well, maybe he did it something when he was drunk and he didn't remember. And like, that was sort of like the compromise that I came to in my head, but I tried to avoid thinking about it. Well, all throughout my life, it got to a point where, like, my dad just never talked about it again. And I ended up having a good relationship with my dad because I had to move back in with him for high school because my mom was crazy. Basically, I'm not even going to tell that whole story. I ended up moving back in with my mom and then moved back in with my dad. And then we mostly didn't really talk in high school. He kind of just left me alone. But I ended up having a good relationship with him and maintained that relationship to this day, though he's not well and now he lives in a nursing home. But he the thing is, my sister could never drop it in terms of trying to make me estranged from my father. She couldn't have, it was like every time I saw her, you know, every couple of years I'd see her. We don't live in the same state, but every couple of years or so I'd see her, and she'd always fucking have some story, some new version of something that's happened that she wanted me to know about, and, you know, just like bringing up stuff from childhood. And it was just like, oh, like, for fuck's sake, like, why are we even talking about this still? Like, why, you know? And looking back on it, I think that she just wanted to rest assured that, like, I was still siding with her or something. Like, she wanted to, like, test the waters to see if she could get me to say bad things about my dad, which I would, because I had plenty of bad things to say about him. And ideally she would have wanted me to, like, cut ties with him and, you know, just never speak to him again. But I wasn't going to do that, you know? So, what was weird is that eventually, a couple years ago, I ended up moving in with my dad to take care of him because he had Parkinson's. And, that is, you know, I was his only kid that was, you know, potentially going to do that.
Right.
So I did that, and you know, very coincidentally, what's funny is that my dad had gotten into the early men's rights movement because of the false accusation that was leveled against him. I don't think that my sister was very clear about his levels of sickness. But you know, he was sick, and he wasn't completely all there. So he wasn't going to bring up drama from our past. Like, that was way overwhelming for him. He didn't want to talk about that kind of thing.
Right.
But he would talk about politics, and he would talk about feminism in general, just not in relation to my sister and the false accusation. That's not what he wanted to talk about. Well, I think that my sister, what happened was, I started criticizing feminism, as everybody on YouTube knows. And But it had to do with me first, with feminists trying to take over every aspect of the LGBT community, including spaces that were designated to be for gay men and gay men only. Like when it, you
Hmm.
know, it was bad enough that everything that was supposed to be LGBT was headed by feminists, and that it's been like that for a very long time, and that's bad and annoying. But when it got to the point where they were taking over gay male for gay male spaces and making them, making men afraid to say the word bitch or cunt, or else they'll get banned from that space. That was really bad, and I was like, fuck that. And so I began researching feminism more. And then I had already been doing that by the time Bernie Sanders became the competition for Hillary Clinton. And I supported him. And due to that, people started calling me a misogynist. So I was already in this position of like, circumstantial, majorly researching and criticizing feminism due to happenings in my own life. It had nothing to do with my childhood, my past with my sister leveling the false accusation. It didn't even occur to me if it was false or not. I was not thinking about that in terms of
Right.
me approaching men's rights stuff. Like, that's just how it was. Like, I was already doing that based on the bad actions of feminism in 2015, 2016. However, I started posting about things on Facebook, and that was when my sister tried to vaguely argue with me a little bit. And she's not stupid. That's the thing. You guys have to keep in mind. She's very, very smart. She's my sister. She's as smart as I am. A little bit uh, delusional and kind of crazy in terms of like how people perceive her, I
Right.
think. But she's also very Machiavellian and ruthless when it comes to like, defaming anybody who crosses her. You just imagine her like some sort of Cersei Lannister or something. Like, honestly.
Yikes.
Um, yeah, she's really an awful person. I'm realizing this more and more, and she had always treated me well up until this past couple years. And it's one of those things where it's like, if somebody treats you well, you can overlook a lot in them, and then when you're their target, you're like, whoa, I didn't know just how awful you are, and you kind of wish you figured it out sooner.
Right.
So she tried to argue with me a little bit when I was criticizing feminism, but she realized she was in over her head. I think, honestly, like, that's the best way I can say it. She realized that I knew that that I knew my shit, and that if she were to proceed with arguing with me, she was going to lose. Because, I mean, most people probably wouldn't want to argue with me if they knew how smart I was and realized the extent of my knowledge. And I think the thing is with her about feminism is that she does everything she can to side with feminism because she has something to hide, in the way that feminism encouraged her to level a false accusation. So, you know, if she sides with feminists, she'll have feminists in her corner. It's kind of like my video about sisterhood. There's kind of like the sisterhood, and the sisterhood will help corroborate stories, help protect you in your lies if you do it for them. And so they all stick together in that way. And they just sort of collectively lie about anybody who crosses them. And that's sort of how feminist organizing has evolved, really. So instead of trying to argue with me, she launched a smear campaign against me. And she called my oldest friend in the world that I've known for over 25 years. And
Hmm.
she called him to say that she thought that I was having a mental breakdown. And in
Oh, okay.
full disclosure, I am diagnosed as bipolar, and I take medications. I have not had an actual problem with my bipolar disorder since 2005. So that's about 12 years. I've been totally fine, and you know, there the medical records would prove it. You know what I mean? So she in she pretended to be concerned with me, saying that I had a mental disorder. She thought she was worried about my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
But her way of showing concern was not to talk to me. She never called me nor wrote me an email, but she called this friend of mine that I've known for 25 years and put ideas in his head. And she's like, yeah, why is he so obsessed with feminism? I think that this is him being bipolar and he's being crazy. Now, that's already a crappy thing to do. But what's really creepy and what you would not expect from this is that she successfully turned that person against me.
Huh.
Yeah, like this is
How long have you known this person?
over 25 years. Like I've known him since the 4th grade.
So why would he just like suddenly be listening to your sister?
Yeah, it's really weird. Honestly, what I think it is because he has his own story and set of things to hide. He's a far leftist activist. He was the first conscientious objector to the Iraq War on paper, but that's actually not true. He's not a conscientious objector. He's not somebody who joined the military and then while he was in the military decided that he didn't want to be in the military. That's what a conscientious objector is supposed to be, you know? Like you're supposed to be somebody who thought that it was a good idea to go into the military and then you had some epiphany that you're nonviolent or something, right?
Right.
That's not who he is. He joined the military and he was anti-war before he did it. He never decided that he wanted to be a soldier. He only joined the military with the explicit purpose of quitting to be an anti-war activist.
What?
Yeah, it's weird. So he joined the military right after the Twin Tower thing happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he did so because and this is where it gets funny about, she was trying to tell him that I was going crazy. He actually is an unmedicated bipolar person who's had numerous different manic episodes and has gone to the mental hospital multiple times in more recent years. I think that the most recent time that he went to the mental hospital was probably 5 years ago or so. Or actually maybe more like 4.
I thought somebody who was a conscientious, because wasn't Bernie Sanders a conscientious objector as well? But
that was probably during the draft.
Well, no, he has been, I think, for all of his life. He's never done anything. That's why when those people at BLM on stage, when they pushed him off stage basically and whatever, that's why he just told all of his people to stand down, because he's always been since his college days, super peace movement and absolutely will not fight, blah blah blah. But that's what I thought it was, is when you are completely opposed to the idea of any kind of violence, a la Gandhi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember the exact specifics of how it is, but if you are like that, it's supposed to be something that you can sign up and register as that to avoid being drafted. But if you are that, you're not supposed to join the military, obviously. So
but can't you join the military? Maybe, I'm not sure, because I don't know. I'm not this knowledgeable on the military, but can't you possibly join the military in a non-combat role? So like a medic?
Well, he didn't do that. He joined the Marines and went to boot camp. Yeah, no, he is a fraud. He is an absolute. He's an absolute fraud, and he will lie. He gets speaking engagements because he was the first person to be in the military and then change his status to conscientious objector and then to get out of the war. And when he did that, he got on Good Morning America and came out as both a conscientious objector and as gay on Good Morning America within 6 months of, signing up. It was calculated. That was his plan from the get-go. It was basically a publicity stunt.
Right.
And he did that. And when he has public speaking engagements, they say, well, why did you join the military? And he was like, well, I was young. I was confused. Bullshit. That is not, no, no. You joined the military so that you could quit the military and then be an anti-war activist. That's why. I've known him since the 4th grade. He went to my fucking hippie ass alternative high school. He's gay. He's like less aggressive in terms of like violence and stuff than I am. It was him being an unmedicated bipolar person with a messianic complex. Like he got all megalomaniacal and decided that he was going to end all war by joining the military and then quitting the military and speaking out against the military. It was like this like little, you know, half-baked plan in his little head.
Like, I got news for you, dude. People are going to fucking fight, man. I don't care what you think. What the hell?
And the other thing is like, well, cool, you can do that, except for in order to do that, you have to lie.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the rest of your life, in order to milk that activism, you're going to have to lie every time. You're going to have to say, yeah, I was the first person who decided I was a conscientious objector while I was in the military. Except for that's not true. You
can't ever give up that story.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's been some of the reasons that his mental health has always been so bad. Like it goes back to, he starts fixating on the fact that he lives a whole lie. But of course, there's countless fucking far leftist activists who worship him as some sort of a hero because they believe the lie. And he ended up doing all sorts of veterans activism. And this is where it gets weird with him. He ended up doing a bunch of quote unquote veterans activism. And he does stuff where he helps veterans do artistic projects. Mainly what that actually has amounted to, because he's a fucking shit organizer and he's not even a real artist. Like he's never strictly studied a discipline. Like he's the only thing he can really do is dance like he's a good amateur dancer. He's not a professional dancer. He's not trained, but for an amateur, he's quite good. Basically. But other than that, he doesn't do any art really. Sometimes he draws, but very rarely. But he decided that he wanted to be some sort of like veterans artistic coordinator to help them with artistic therapy. And what?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I do have to let you know, because I'm out in the woods, I have like really limited battery power.
Okay.
And right now I've got 15 minutes left on my laptop before it's gonna die.
Oh, okay. So I can get through this story then.
Okay.
So he has this he's supposed to help veterans, but like ultimately what that's mainly amounted to is him getting them to perform in drag for these shows that he organized, that he dances in. And he did 4 of them, like once on a year. They're called Make Drag Not War. And he was a fucking and at first there was a bunch of veterans and they were like, yeah, we're into doing this, cool, like, you know, they wanted attention. And by the last show there was literally 1 veteran left, and it was all just drag queens. And it was called Make Drag Not War. It's supposed to be a show with veterans, and there's only 1 veteran. And that veteran that was left, like, oh, and they said that it wasn't a show about us. His name, I'll just say that his name is Brian. His name isn't Brian though. They said it's not a show about veterans, it's the Brian show. And none of them wanted to work with him anymore because they didn't feel like he actually gave a shit about veterans. And why would he? He wasn't a veteran. He wasn't somebody who had joined the military. So all he really did was inspire veterans to be far leftist activists and dress up in drag and stuff. He never helped veterans much. So when I started getting into feminist criticisms and men's rights stuff, I think that there was a part of him that kind of subconsciously knew that this was a huge blind spot of his. Because
what if he's just trying to use like the situation that your sister has presented him with in order to be kind of the next publicity thing for him if he's fallen irrelevant and he needs something else to do? Because if they're both on, you know, the feminist hardcore radfem train together.
Well, he's not on the feminist hardcore radfem train though. Yeah. He sides with them, but he doesn't know anything about it.
Yeah, but if he's looking to become relevant again, maybe he'll just...
No, he doesn't want to become relevant again, I don't think. Yeah, he's weird. He's living in a fucking U-Haul that he converted to being a tiny home, and I don't know what he wants right now. But so ultimately, she called him and was able to successfully turn him against me. And it's very weird. And she's been doing it to multiple different people. And she called him. It was a year ago when she first called him to poison him against me. And ever since then, he has refused to listen to me talk about feminism and men's rights. He says, nope, I won't talk to you about this. I'm not interested. And I'm like, well, no, okay, no, it's not just that. He says, I think that you're wrong. I think that you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, okay, well, can I give you the evidence? And he says, no, I'm not interested. This is somebody I'm supposed to have known for 25 years. That's absolutely unacceptable. That's not how you treat your friend that you've known for 25 years. The one thing you do is at least listen to them, you know? So somehow my sister got to him and convinced him that he's not allowed to talk to me about this. I don't know how, you know? I think it has to do with him. I think it largely has to do with him realizing that he's been a poor veterans activist. Like, for him to realize how fucked up the left is, that would reveal a lot about his own shortcomings in terms of how much he didn't help the veterans, I think. So I gave him an ultimatum after a year of him not listening to me. And I told him, if you don't, because I did the shows that he organized, the Make Dragnot War shows. I was like second in command of those. So if you knew my name, you could Google me and find my association in that. Like, you could find me in the program and stuff.
Right.
So I realized that eventually, as my identity becomes more public, I'm going to have to talk about that. And if he is unwilling to look into, you know, men's rights issues, I'm going to have to denounce it, because I'm not particularly proud of, you know, supposedly working with veterans, except for all we did was get them to dress up in drag and be far leftist activists. Like, we didn't actually really help them. And I don't want to pretend like I'm not going to be like, you know, I'm going to be honest about that in the future. So I was like, look, you need to at least examine these arguments. I wanted him to listen to an interview with Erin Pizzey, who's the woman who started the first domestic violence shelter. Yeah. Because she explains feminist corruption way better than anybody else can. And I told him, if you don't listen to this, I'm going to have to eventually speak out against you and tell people the truth about you kind of being a fraud, because that's not because I want to, but that's what I'm starting to believe about you. Like, I actually just no longer believe that you cared about veterans. I think that you mostly cared about your own career activism and your own gigantic ego, because that's what it seems like. You know, like, all I can do is tell the truth. That's the only thing I'm good at. So he decided to share out of context private messages, just one, and he blamed on his Facebook timeline, and he said, Trump is really bringing out the worst in people. This guy's bullying me. And he called me a bully. Meanwhile, he shares the message, and, you know,
rallying people against you, right?
Yeah. And I responded. I was able to respond and I was more reasonable. If anybody was impartial, they'd look at this and be like, they would side with me, I would think, because he was just saying nonsense, and like what I was saying actually made sense, you know. But he eventually blocked me, and then after he blocked me, my sister and both my sisters, but mainly the one sister, the liar. Oh, and I mentioned in the thread, I mentioned that this didn't just come from nowhere, that the reason that I was saying this stuff to him was because my sister had called him. And the reason that my sister had called him was because she was trying to socially sabotage me. She was trying to preemptively attack me. And the reason that she was, what?
Go ahead.
The reason that she was doing that was because of her false accusation. So
regarding that, you know, because you were bringing up defamation of character, it's really, really hard to prove libel because you have to be able to show certain things in order to have a successful libel case, and it's usually long and drawn out and costly. But you basically have to show that one, that it happened.
Yeah,
so
I have that.
Okay, you have to show that it happened. You have to show that this person intentionally was not telling the truth.
Yeah, like, I think that's evident.
Well, you might think that it's evident, but how do you show that somebody, if she says this is the truth as I knew it at the time, even if I was wrong, she still believed she was telling the truth?
Yeah.
That's a really, really, really hard thing to demonstrate in court, is that somebody is purposefully and knowingly saying something or propagating something that's untruthful. So that's a super, super hard one. But you have to show that it happened, that basically that it isn't true, whatever it was they were saying. You have to be able to show their intent. And then lastly, you have to be able to show that you've had some kind of damages because of it. Not so that is also
I think I have all those three things.
I mean, usually showing damages that have resulted directly because of the claimed libel is usually also a pretty hard thing to show.
Well, I have social damages already, definitely. She turned my longest friend against me, and it's been...
Damages is considered to be something that's like a monetary value. You have to be able to show a loss of business or... for example, an inability, a decreased ability to get jobs, places like where you may be interviewed, but you weren't hired because this case took place and has adversely affected your reputation. So that's another thing. That's another way that you could show damages. I'm not sure that social damages, like I lost friends, is something that really would count for anything.
Yeah, they made it look like it did on the thing I read about the laws, but I'm not really sure.
I mean, there's two things there that are just particularly difficult to demonstrate. So and the reason I'm just telling you, I'm like less than 10% battery now, but I'm just telling you because if you really are interested in doing that, these are the things that you need to look to build an evidential case towards.
Yeah.
Those particular.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it would be evident if you saw if you saw what she was saying about me, right? And you noted the fact that she's never once came to talk to me. Like, there would be zero records of her ever calling me or sending me an email over the course of the past year.
Right, but she's not obligated to talk to you about anything. Nobody's obligated to talk to anybody else.
Yeah, but at the same time, then why would she have any reason to believe that I had any mental health problems? Why does she get to go around telling people in my personal network that I'm mentally insane if she has not even talked to me?
Because maybe she believes that in her own head, and that's something she can do. I mean, it doesn't have to be true for somebody to believe it, right? So you could, though, potentially also show, excuse me, I think a bug just flew in my mouth, show damages if through the mental distress that was caused by her activities, or the mental distress resultant, like, you know, if you could demonstrate this connection between her friend or your friend and her, and that this was costing you money by way of mental health care due to that duress, you could potentially claim that as damages as well.
Or getting in the way of my work as a YouTuber?
No, well, no. This, like, for example, her haranguing of you and spreading some. This would be an example of how it would go. Basically her false accusations are so distressful to you as an individual that you had to go seek psychiatric or psychological help. You know, you had to go see your psych doctor and spend money doing that because it was so mentally taxing on you. And then you could say, this cost me upwards of $50,000 over the course of the 2 years that she's been doing this. And I feel like I can show that these things that she was saying are false. And so you sue her for defamation. And then the cost of that would basically be what your medical bills total. That's what you would be suing her for. So that would be another way that you could claim damages. But then you're going to have to show that you've actually been to a doctor. Your doctor will have to agree to the fact that you are, in fact, suffering undue mental distress, specifically because of the actions and the things that she's doing and taking. So that kind of opens up its whole other new can of worms going on there. So, I mean, defamation cases are really, really hard cases to prove. So
what about in relation to my work as a YouTuber, though? Like the fact that she's trying to actively discourage people from, like, she's trying to ruin my reputation in that way.
So if you can demonstrate that because of her actions, you are specifically losing audience to which you know, obviously having monetized videos and whatnot, and that audience loss or that ad revenue loss, if you had companies that were sponsoring you and they pulled out because of this, then you would definitely have a way to say, look, because of these, you know, these actions, these things have occurred. These are costing me money in the really real world as far as my job is concerned. As a public figure, you do have a little bit more of a steep case because people who are in the public limelight are more than the common citizen. They are expected to be criticized and critiqued. So, you know, but then again, we say the public, but we're talking, you know, I mean, what's your channel, right? Like you're a little over 10,000, right?
Yeah. I'm over 11,000, but.
Yeah. Well, what my point that I'm getting at is that you're not a politician. You're not a movie star, you know, right? You don't have millions and millions. You're not PewDiePie, for example. So, but you still are in the public limelight. So that could be a thing that they, you know, try to make it a little bit steeper mountain for you to climb because you are subject to having your opinions criticized and critiqued when you put them out there in the way that you do, and then get paid for that if you know, get paid for it. So,
yeah. Well, she is definitely deliberately lying. Like, okay, regardless of the legalities, she is doing. I haven't seen the actual screenshots of what she said, but it sounds from what she said like it's so clearly self-contradictory, where she's pretending to be concerned, but her way of showing concern is telling people not to talk to me, encouraging people to block me. And then she also says, oh yeah, I think that he's crazy. But then she also says, but that's no excuse because being crazy doesn't inspire people to make hate videos. And so it's like she's being internally contradictory with her message at the same time. But I haven't actually seen them. But do you see what I'm saying with that? Like,
no, I mean, I get it. I'm only telling you these things because I do think it's a really difficult thing to show.
Yeah, I have to prove the damages mainly.
And you have to prove a connection between what she's saying and what you're claiming. So that can be a pretty steep thing to try to demonstrate. Somebody wants to see my necklace. Oh, sorry. So somebody in the chat says they want to see my necklace. I don't know if you guys can see it. I'll try to put it close. It's a lollipop. Was that close enough? Was that like actually on the screen? I'm not. I'm looking more at the chat than I am at the actual thing. But okay, wait there. Yes, I have 7% now. That's what it says, and I'm happy to just run my battery right down to nothing and let my computer shut off. But just so everybody knows, I guess if I just suddenly disappear, that's what happened. Battery on laptop died, and there we are. So, I don't know. I guess that like I'm trying to think of, I mean, because ultimately your goal here is to get her to stop doing what she's doing, presumably, right?
Yeah. Well, I would like her to go apologize to people, because she's, I mean, she has fucked with my life now. I mean, I don't know how many people that she's told this to, but she's been at it for a year. And I know it's not just this one guy. It's been two other people because there's this one person that we know in common who said that, oh, you're obviously mentally ill, and she's a feminist too. But it's like it's become clear that everybody that we know in common, she has tried to tell that I'm obsessed with feminism and it's a part of me being mentally ill.
Okay, so here's something I'm curious about. I mean, if she's been doing this for that long,
Mhm.
what do you think her motives could potentially be?
She's trying to socially sabotage me so that when I tell the truth about her lying about my father, no one will believe me.
But why would it make a difference to her if you...
She thought that I started researching. Hello? She thought that I started researching feminism because I think her computer died. Oh no. Wait. Trying to figure out. Well, it looks like her computer died. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll just answer the question for the audience. The reason that she did it is because she thought she's a narcissist, and she thought that the only reason that I started she thought that the only reason that I started criticizing feminism to begin with was because of her. She thought that my dad put it in my head that feminism was bad because I was living with my dad again to take care of him. So she thought, oh no, he's living with our dad. Our dad must have told him to that feminism is bad, and that's why he. And if that were to be the case, that would have been based around her and her false accusation. So she then decided that she was going to start socially sabotaging me to cover her own ass because she thought it had to do with her. Funnily enough, I had never that angle of it had never even occurred to me. It did not even occur to me that she had lied. But when she started trying to socially sabotage me, then I started thinking about it. And I was like, oh, that's why she's trying to socially sabotage me, because she's trying to discredit me. Because she knows she's guilty, basically. If she was innocent, she would probably just talk to me, right? Um, so yeah, if she was guilty, if she wasn't guilty, she could have called me and been like, yeah, this is the truth, blah, 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 blah. But instead, she had to try to socially sabotage me preemptively so that if I were to tell anybody, they wouldn't believe me. And she went behind my back and she pretended to be concerned about my mental health. But in fact, that was just fake. And she did that to get through to gain leverage over me. And the fucked up thing is that it worked. You know, like she successfully turned the longest friend that I've had in the world against me. Now, granted, he's not a good person. He's profoundly selfish, and I've done a lot for him, and he's never done anything in return for me. And he even finds a way to blame. Like, when he had mental episodes of his own, I was his primary support person, and then he blames me for it afterwards. Like, finds a way to get mad at me. And so, yeah. Ultimately, what I'm going to definitely do either way is I'm going to tell the story. I'm going to probably tell the story on places like, I'm going to try to get on Honey Badger Radio to explain the whole story. Because, yeah, it's pretty crappy, all of this. I shouldn't have to, because, I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was look into the truth, and then I got attacked for that. So it's pretty shitty, and it sucks because this is ending up becoming the thing that's revealing my true identity. Well, I actually probably should use names. Why shouldn't I use names? Because they're using my name. And they're using my real name, and they're associating me. No, but no, they're using my name, and they're actually lying. So, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, and I've been sort of looking for an excuse to come forward with my real identity anyway, to be honest. I'm getting a little bit tired of being totally anonymous. So, yeah, if you can come up with in a comment a good reason why I should not use real names, maybe I will. I want lawsuit fuel, let them use my name. Well, doesn't mean that I still don't understand why not to use their names. I don't see yeah, I mean, I probably won't for the time being, but I'll ask, I have a direct line with Hannah from the Honey Badgers. I'll ask what they think, and maybe I'll just be I'm not giving them the rope to hang you with. Well, if I were to use their name, I wouldn't be doing anything wrong. I would just say, this is what they're saying about me. And also, with the